Now let's pull up the questions for this week. First one was a really good one just because it's congruent with a lot of what I talk about. So what are your thoughts on high rep circuit style warm-ups? So I don't think that you should go through an entire circuit training routine. I do think that you should have a few things, just to make it real simple. You work your prime movers through an extended range of motion, and then you work your antagonist muscles, back to back. Focus on getting a pump. As soon as you get a pump, as soon as you feel warm, you're done. So that could be as little as 50 reps. Really light. For upper body, I like dumbbell bench, overhead press, dumbbell bench, dumbbell overhead press. And then for squats, I like the stationary bike, reverse stationary bike. You can walk backwards on a treadmill with the belt turned off. And then for deadlifts, I like just, good mornings, back extensions, body weight squats, things like that. So that'll take care of you. It doesn't have to be a full circuit workout. You shouldn't feel particularly tired afterwards, but you should feel warm. How to transition from rehab to a training mindset mentally. And he said he was going to take a year to do that. He was going to use some knees over toes guy shit to get his knee better. So I can give you just some general things to think about and then like how I would approach it. So unless your knee is like completely destroyed, you don't need to like not train in a strength training capacity for an entire year. I don't want people to look up these bulletproofing strategies and think that they have to have absolutely every box checked in terms of injury prevention. Like, that's how your training ends up all bulletproofing and not training, you know what I mean? So like, far be it from me to tell you what to do. You've already decided that, but just something to think about, bro. Like, so you can start incorporating some of the knees over toes stuff. So like walking backwards on a treadmill, the tib raises, reverse stationary biking, things like that. And you can also start to slowly introduce resistance training. It doesn't have to be balls to the wall or anything like that, but you should work your muscles, in my opinion. I still did back extensions and stuff when I was in the recovery process for breaking my back, and I'm not saying that you don't have a legitimate injury, but that's just my perspective. So now in terms of how you would transition from this rehab mindset to a training mindset, slowly but surely start to introduce those things again, load them, and be patient. It really ain't nothing to it but to do it, man. What are your thoughts on behind the neck presses as an accessory for overhead press? Should you use them as a movement to drive progress, or is more quality overhead press work a better idea? So I think that if you're someone that has any sort of layback to their press, when I'm in a lighter body weight, that's just pretty much my default. I've found to have some sort of layback as I fatigue. A behind the neck press or a seated non-back supported overhead press, either with free weights or a Smith machine, or a really good accessory, just because they're true strict pressing volume. You can go through the same full range of motion, and then it's just actually targeted to your shoulders, your triceps, and so on. It's a lot harder. It's a good self-limiting variation to use. So yeah, I think that's worthwhile. For most people though, behind the neck press is something that you have to ease into, in terms of you can put your hand behind your head like that and press with just your hand more than likely, but with a barbell, not everybody has the shoulder integrity to do that right at first, but you can acclimate yourself to that. Like, it's not something you're never gonna be able to do, but for impatient motherfuckers, you're better off picking a non-back supported seated overhead press or a Z press or something like that. Next question, what are your thoughts on behind the back deadlifts? Do squats. What are your thoughts on Nucleus Overload? I really find it quite interesting, and it's just demonstrably a concept that does work. I just think that in terms of training economy and things that you can spend your time doing, just do regular training. Now, pullovers are something that I really enjoy. This was the third part of the question. I really enjoy them just because they give a full range of motion and that full stretch on your lats. I do like straight arm pull downs better though, but equipment notwithstanding, that's a good variation to use. What are your thoughts on lat pull downs as a pull-up variation? All the best street lifters use those as a variation. I think that you can do a lot of things with a lat pull down. You can do an extended range of motion, Gironda style pull up on the lat pull down, which, you know, a lot of people are going to be limited by, you know, just their ability to do that with body weight, but you can do that with less than your body weight loaded on the lat pull down and then get through that full range of motion. What it ends up being is it's like it's a mix between a lat pull down and a pullover. It's really good stuff. I really enjoy those. They feel amazing. Try them out. So yeah, definitely I would add them on a separate day. So I have one day where you're doing the lat pull downs and then another where you're doing your pull up variations. What are your thoughts on top sets and back off sets for progression on hip hinges and vertical pulls? They're excellent for everything. So they're really good for people that like to go ham on big barbell movements, like to a higher RPE, because you can have a high RPE top set. It's like, you know, close to your rep max or whatever. And then you can do a percentage based back down that makes the back downs easy enough to where if you overshot your top set, I'm gonna be honest with you, it doesn't really matter. A lot of coaches and, you know, internet personalities make it seem like it's an end all be all kind of thing, that you have to be all on RPE all the time and then it'll just bury your progress for the week or the month or whatever the fuck, or make your arms explode. It doesn't. I'm not gonna lie to you. Anyone who tells you that is, they lack a little bit of experience. It's about average intensity. It's a little different for like absolute grinder 1 rep maxes. Those are just a unique stimulus, but like going a little too hard on a set of 6 is not gonna bury you for the week. It's just not reality. Do natural lifters need an arm day? That's not specific to a natural lifter, so an enhanced lifter could use an arm day. Now in terms of if you need one, do a needs versus wants analysis. Do you care about having a big bench press or, you know, a big row or anything like that? No, you just training for hypertrophy, okay. You're doing things that aren't, you know, as taxing on your elbows and shit like that. Sure, put in an arm day. Do your bicep curls, do your tricep rope push downs. I actually like got this from Alex from Alpha Destiny. For the longest time, I didn't put in any direct tricep work into my program, but I've been doing those tricep rope push downs lately and I really like them. Just experimental, just to see how they work for me. Traditionally, I don't recommend that most long arm dudes include a lot of direct arm work if they're doing like a maximized amount of benching. It's just, I found that for most people, and there's exceptions to this rule, but it's a rule nonetheless. If your arms are longer, you're going through a complete range of motion through flexion and extension with your elbow for your bicep or your tricep. So you don't need a lot of extra arm isolation. But this in particular I think is really good, just because it feels good on the elbows. This might be something that I make a video about, talking about maybe more of a nuance for a long armed bencher or anything like that, that you can really blast this variation. I haven't noticed any immediate tricep or elbow discomfort, which like if I do like JM press, tricep extension, anything like that, any extra, you know, tricep dominant pressing outside of my normal, I immediately feel the repercussions of that. And I went pretty ham on the tricep rope push downs. I'm not gonna lie to you. And it, you know, my triceps felt great, my elbows felt great. So do it if you want to, I guess to say. We talked about some more nuance, but do it if you want. Chest supported T-bar row versus seal row. I'm someone that talks about both of these exercises. I always tell people if you don't have a chest supported T-bar row, do a seal row, just because they're essentially the same exact exercise. A seal row is a little more versatile in that you can use dumbbells to pull around the bench and to kind of work the, you know, work lats versus upper back versus rear delts. Whereas a chest supported T-bar row, usually, some of them have different grips on them, but they usually just have the one grip on them, where it's like mostly like an upper back exercise, or like a blend of upper back, lats, and rear delts. It's not specialized to one or the other. Do both if you have access to both though. Like you could have one day where you do T-bar rows, chest supported T-bar row, not a regular T-bar row. Those are garbage in my opinion. Like standing T-bar rows, they're a shitty partial. and they you know, it's all the same lower back fatigue, all the same posterior chain fatigue. It's just, you know, you're not working your back really. And then have your seal row on another day, and then do variations of seal row, so like a dumbbell seal row, snatch grip seal row, so on. Both really good. Standing overhead press versus non-back supported overhead press seated in terms of stimulus, one, and fatigue on the lower back. So like the seated non-back supported overhead press is way better of an exercise as a building movement, in my opinion, just because it doesn't have any axial fatigue. You can't lay back on it. And it's just more of a targeted stimulus to your shoulders. It is. You're gonna have some, no one on this fucking planet keeps a strict press completely strict as they do reps. For singles, sure, I see people do it all the time, but for reps, you don't see it. There's always some form of engaging your upper chest and changing the leverage of the movement. A non-back supported seated overhead press is really good. Actually, the Smith machine version of a seated non-back supported overhead press is something that Big Z, one of the strongest overhead pressers in history, if not the strongest overhead presser in history, in my opinion. He really swore by that exercise, the Smith machine version, just for building fucking shoulder size and strength. And you know, I've seen it for myself just because it's a lot harder. Typically on a Smith machine, you can do, it's seen as easier. It ain't really easier, and I'm gonna make a whole video talking about that. Whereas like the Smith machine is harder than a barbell variation most of the time. So like Smith machine hack squats with your feet in front of the bar are harder than barbell back squats in terms of like the load that you can put on. You're not gonna be able to use as much load. Smith machine seated overhead press with no back support, that's harder than the barbell variation. But the non-back supported seated is a way better exercise, so just use that. If I'm limited on time, should I focus more on pull-ups or rows? This is a good one. It just depends upon what the rest of your training is looking like. If you're doing a lot of benching, it's very bench heavy, do rows, just because pull-ups can eat into your recovery if you're running a maximized benching program. Now, if you're just featuring bench in your program as a lift, along with a myriad of other exercises that aren't bench related, pull-ups are great, but when you start to really maximize your bench programming, you're maximizing your weighted pull-ups as well, you're gonna overstress something in your pec, and you're not gonna recover workout to workout. So rows are a better option. Rows are just a better one-size-fits-all exercise, in my opinion. I do think that pull-ups are better, chin-ups and pull-ups are better for like a lat stimulus, like noticeably so. But rows are good enough in terms of a lat stimulus that it's a better option most of the time. Now, you should do some form of both, no matter what. So, you know, even if it's just light, you still want to be working the muscles and joints and ligaments and everything from multiple angles, for the same reason that I say, you know, you do some form of overhead work no matter what on a general strength training program, just for shoulder health, you know, just general well-being and injury prevention, for that same reason. So the last question is from OG subscriber. First of all, I appreciate you, King. Thank you. You always leave very nice comments that aren't, you know, sycophant like you just give your honest feedback, and you bring a positive vibe. So saving the best for last. What are your thoughts on fixing a chest imbalance? So he described a chest imbalance that essentially is one pec is bigger than the other. There's a bunch of different reasons for why that could be. I'll just talk about them briefly and succinctly, just to give you some food for thought. It could come down to the way that you're performing your presses. So if you're benching unevenly, that could be one. If you have some sort of scoliosis where you're just naturally holding the bar a little unevenly in terms of, you know, like that as opposed to like that, that could cause it. It could just be a general form issue where like you have no scoliosis or any bone structure issues, then you just legitimately pressing like you're on the fucking Soul Train and shit. I would say take a look at your rep quality, start recording your lifts, and then fix that if that's an issue. Now, if you still notice that you have a chest imbalance after a few weeks in terms of like the strength, how it feels, or I imagine there's some shoulder discomfort that comes with that as well. If you don't notice that start to get better, start to look at how deeply your chest abducts. I'm trying not to use galaxy brain terms, but look at how deeply your shoulder turns out this way when you're at the bottom. You're gonna have to record your lifts to look at this. If you notice that one is turning in and stretching more than the other, you might want to start doing some targeted isolation work. So stuff like chest flies, dumbbell bench, where you're making extra sure to stretch them evenly. Those would be really good, and that might solve the issue in of itself. Now, if it's none of those things and you just notice that, okay, all these things are good, one of my pecs is just noticeably bigger than the other one, first and foremost, a couple things to consider. If there's no pain, there's no loss in performance, and that's it, you can perform your exercises safely, and your form is good, most people have imbalances in terms of one muscle is a little bigger than the other. It's not really ever gonna not be the case, I guess I should say. Nobody's completely symmetrical. Even seemingly symmetrical people have asymmetries. But if it is painful, what you can do is your regular strength and conditioning program, you just make sure to incorporate some of those strategies we talked about, and then you just, it's the old thing, like you just do a little bit more extra volume with the arm that's lagging or the pec that's lagging. So you can do like single arm dumbbell press at the end of your workout. Maybe it's just like a finisher for that particular pec. Less is more, because you just don't want to cause another asymmetry where like, okay, now this one is bigger than this one, and before this one was bigger than that one. Just things to consider. It'll get better with time if it is actually an issue. If it's not causing pain or discomfort or a form problem or anything like that, I wouldn't worry about it too much though. That's been the Q&A. We're gonna go ahead and a little bit do the diet one. I didn't get as many questions, you fuckers. Diet Q&As are a lot of fun just because we get the deep dive into less questions. I actually prefer that just because there's more nuance to go in with that. This will be fully time-stamped. If you have any questions, please let me know. Y'all have a good day.